guys. So today we're going to be starting out with the Marvel Retro Series, and this is part of the Marvel 80 Years lineup. Previously we had gotten the Vintage series, and the switch from Vintage to Retro, the only thing I can think that made them do that is the design of the suits and when they were introduced, because the Vintage series, so most of, if not all of those characters debuted in those suits sometime in probably the 60s or 70s. And with this lineup, it looks more so like they debuted in these suits in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s maybe. So that's my guess as to why they changed it from Vintage to Retro. And we're going to be taking a look at all of these figures, but today we're going to start with Cyclops. And Cyclops in this suit is pretty much how I remember him growing up, because I started reading X Factor instead of X-Men first. So I came in kind of in the late 80s. My cousin was actually a huge X-Men fan. But as far as I can tell, he debuted this outfit in X Factor issue number 26. And I think the way that they ended up ultimately explaining his powers, not just him shooting lasers from his eyes, it's actually energy from another dimension, and his eyes are basically portals from that dimension. But let's go ahead and get him out of the box and take a closer look. Okay, so here we go with Cyclops out of the box with a default head. And immediately I noticed that there's a little miss on the paint on top of his head right there on the white stripe, which is disappointing. You can see the blue, like a little blue dot right there. But I'm not usually too concerned with that type of thing because I have touch-up paint that I can use. In this head sculpt, you can see that his eyes are kind of sizzling there. The optic blasts are kind of sizzling, so either he's getting ready to fire or he may have just fired, and they're cooling down. It's a pretty cool look though. I like it where it's not just him in a regular visor. It adds something a little bit different to the figure. Now let's go ahead and talk about articulation. So you're going to be able to get his head up that high, basically looking straight up in the air. You can get him looking pretty much all the way down, side to side, of course. He does have double jointed elbows. He has wrist swivel and pivot. He doesn't come with interchangeable hands, so the right hand you have in a fist, the left hand you have in that familiar pose where it's basically him firing off the optic blast. So I guess you would pose it something like this, behind the effect, I suppose. As far as ab crunch, you can get him bent back that far, forward that much. He does have waist swivel as well. For the legs, you get thigh swivel, double jointed knees, boot swivel, and ankle pivot. So you shouldn't have trouble getting him into any of the positions or poses that you want to. It's a pretty good body sculpt. The only thing that I would have liked to have seen are swappable hands, but you know, that may be asking too much since we did get an alternate head, so I can't complain about it too much. And speaking of the alternate head, let's go ahead and take a look at that now. Okay, so here we have Cyclops with the alternate head on, and there's a little slit in the visor that you're going to be able to take this effect here and plug into it. And you can tell the top, because it has ridges that you can feel, the bottom is smooth. So basically you're just going to take it and it's going to plug right in there. So you can get him in a pose like that, and I'll take some pictures and show him in different stances with it, but looks really good. Let me see if I can just pick him up and kind of rotate him around a little bit for you guys so you can see. But it's pretty awesome. I've seen some customizers like make this effect, so I don't know if this is the first time that Hasbro has released a Cyclops figure that includes this blasting effect, but I have seen some customizers make it themselves. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and compare Cyclops to a couple of other versions that I have of him. Alright, so these are the 3 Cyclops figures that I own, and man, it's hard it's hard to pick a favorite for me, to be honest with you, because like I said, the new one here, I don't think I mentioned it, but the blue is like a kind of a metallic blue, so that looks really good. This one here, even though it's kind of a basic figure, I appreciate the shading effects that they used on it. And then the Jim Lee version, you know, speaks for itself. That's classic Cyclops from the cartoon in the 90s. So I appreciate all of them for what they are. I don't think that I can pick a favorite, to be honest with you. And luckily I don't have to, so I'm not going to. But what I will say is that I think that the best accessories, no doubt, come from the new one. The fact that it includes an alternate head. The other ones, I don't believe that they included any other accessories as far as I remember, but could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, you guys can correct me in the comments. So now let's go ahead and move on to my final thoughts. Okay, so for my final thoughts on this figure, I absolutely love it because it brings back memories of my childhood, and this is how I remember Cyclops. You know, initially my first introduction to Cyclops was through X Factor, so I really appreciate that they released this figure. I love the metallic blue and the white that they used on it. It's accurate to the comic. If I had to nitpick, the only thing that I would point out is that on the back, his neck joint right there is blue, but on the front, you know, it has to be blue in order to match the front. So, you know, if I had to nitpick, that's the only thing that I would say. Other than that, I don't have any real complaints. I can't complain too much about not having alternate hands because they gave us the alternate head. And even the default head has effects on it, so I think that's awesome. So overall, I'm happy to add him to my collection, another Cyclops. If you're an X-Men fan, I think that you're going to want to pick him up. So with that said, I'm going to bring this video to an end. Thank you guys for watching. As always, thank you for your support, and I'll see you on the next video.